It is called the 18-methyl eicosanoic acid. I love this name, and I love what it does. It does hydrophobicity to the hair. What is hydrophobicity? My hair will not be destroyed by the excess of water intake. When I destroy and remove this most important lipid, my hair will get rough, dry, porous, the cuticles will lift, and I will have a bad appearance, difficult to manage. So, if I shampoo my hair every day, will I remove this lipid? No, you will not. This lipid cannot be removed by shampoo. So the fear of people of shampooing the scalp every day is not because we will remove the lipids of the hair. If we shampoo the hair every day, we'll only remove the sebum. But let's talk about the inner lipids. The inner lipids, the most important one is exactly the one I was talking about, the 18-MEA. But it can remove, and it is removed frequently by the chemical treatment that every woman does in the salon. The alkaline treatments such as straightening, such as hair dyeing, but not by the shampoos. And so, what is this function of this? I told you, hydrophobicity is the most important one. Because hydrophobicity diminishes the traction between the fibers, which is the most important cause of hair damage. But when I use the alkaline treatments and I remove the 18-methyl eicosanoic acid, I produce oxidized sulfur, and this is forever. I cannot restore the lost 18-MEA. So I use the cosmetic products in order to try to mimic the lack of this lipid. So let's learn a little bit about the cosmetic behavior of the ethnic hair. Are they the same? Well, they're almost the same, but the tiny differences make a huge difference at the end. So we have the African hair, the Caucasian hair, and the Asian hair. To begin with, they are different in shape. The Asian hair is round all the way. The African hair is flat, and the Caucasian hair is in between those two. So the most sensitive hair is the African hair. Difficult to grow, difficult to comb, difficult to wash, difficult to style, difficult to manage. So this is our most important patient because it has sensitive hair. The African hair is more prone to breakage due to a less activity of the sebaceous gland, low lubrication, less water contact, irregular distribution of the sebum along the fiber, the difference in the cuticle thickness. Parts of the hair is thick, has a normal cuticle, but most do not have. Some parts have only 1 to 2 layers of cuticle. So this is the most sensitive hair. And it's also flat, has an ellipsoid shape, and an irregular shaped root. And look how the traction forces act in the curly hair. It acts and makes it more prone to breakage. And the root is uneven, so the hair grows curly and grows slower than the straight hair. And compare Asian to Caucasian. Caucasian hair is Caucasian hair is thinner, and Asian hair is coarser. And the Asian hair has more cuticle layers than the Caucasian hair. So comparing both, Caucasian hair is more fragile, and Asian hair is more difficult to break. We have to understand that the cuticle is more important to be preserved than the cortex, because once the cortex is achieved, the hair will break. So every cosmetic has the aim to lubricate and preserve the cuticle layers. We have about 8 to 10 cuticle layers, depending on the ethnicity, and the lubrication is the most important way to preserve this. So talking about a little bit of Asian and Caucasian hair, the Asian hair is more resistant than Caucasian hair because it has a larger diameter and medulla. Imagine that. It has a great medulla, greater than Caucasian, that you almost don't have any medulla. Another publication says that Asian hair is very resistant to straightening. But take a look at here. African hair, in this work, African hair is more resistant to the combination of treatment of straightening and coloring. How come this happening? We used to think that the African hair is the most sensitive. Well, sometimes it is not as well. This is a very interesting publication that shows that Asian hair has more cuticle layers, closer to 10 than the Caucasians, that are closer to 5. The Asian cuticles are wider, thicker, and more densely packed. On Asian hair, the cuticles are laid down with a steeper angle. That's why the Asian hair is a little bit rough, kind of dry. It's not exactly dry, but the cuticles are positioned in a steeper angle than the Caucasian, where the cuticles are flatter. So Caucasian hair has a smoother surface and touch than the Asian hair. The distance between cuticle cells is narrower in Asian hair than Caucasian. So Caucasian hair, of course, breaks first. So let's talk a little bit about the lipids. I told you about the 18-methyl-eicosanoic acid, which is an endogenous lipid. It's produced by the matrix cells, different than the sebum. The sebum is produced by sebaceous gland, and it's called an exogenous lipid. This can be removed by the shampoo, but the endogenous lipids cannot be removed by the shampoo. So the African hair has more sebum than Asian or Caucasian. Asian and Caucasian, they are better because they have more concentration of internal lipids. So if you break the cuticle of the African hair, you won't have too much lipid inside. So the African hair needs more lubrication than Caucasian or Asian hair. But of course, hair care products, they must be addressed to each ethnicity differently. Of course, somebody today might be speaking about the trichohyalin polymorphic variation. This is a very new study. We're not going to be into it today, but probably one of the points about the curliness of the hair shaft depends on mutations on this protein. Let's talk a little bit about shampoo, low poo, no poo, and co-wash. You must be a little bit curious about that. So we have 4 types of surfactants. Surfactants are detergents, are the molecules that remove sebum. Some are very strong. They remove the sebum and leave a negatively charged net when they are removed. And some are a little bit milder. When all of them, they are in contact with water, they form a round structure called micelle. The inner part of the micelle is hydrophobic, so the dirt stays here, and the outer part is hydrophilic. So the negatively charged net is in the outer part of the micelle. And while you rinse, after shampooing, a negatively charged net formed. It's important because it is necessary to cleanse the hair. So makes the hair, at least at this moment, more negatively charged. This is a problem because sometimes Caucasian and Asian hair need to have a very strong scalp cleansing. So usually Asian and Caucasian hair, they have oily scalp, but they don't want to dry the tips. So we have to use different conditioners for each ethnicity. The problem with the African hair is that due to this sensibility, the low scalp cleansing of this ethnicity is even taken, for example, American women to stop exercising. They don't want to wash their hair due to this. So that is where dermatologists come to teach them how they can exercise, cleanse their scalp, wash their hair, shampoo, and what regular products then they can use in order to have also a healthy scalp and a healthy hair shape. So we have less aggressive shampoos now coming down the pipe, which is called Poo, Low Poo, and Light Poo, and Co-Wash. It was first designed by this hairstylist in 1997, so it's not so new. And it was addressed only to curly hair. And I chose those 4 characters to try to teach you what it is: low poo, no poo, and co-wash. Poo is this guy here. So this is the shampoo, the ordinary shampoo. This is the lauryl sulfate. Lauryl is what we call sulfate shampoo. So this is poo. When you don't use poo, you don't use sulfate. So they are here. They are low poo, they are lower, or they are no poo at all. So let's see. This guy here, the Eorn, is a low poo. He is almost always cocoa betaine, but there are also other ingredients. And this is a milder surfactant, not as harsh as the POO itself, which is the lauryl sulfate. But what is also no POO or co-wash? No POO is when you have another kind of surfactant, which is represented here by this guy here, the piglet. It's also called the co-wash. It's a non-ionic surfactant, and this is because it doesn't cause so much negatively charged net after rinsing. Most of the time, it's the cetyl alcohol which makes the role of the surfactants. The problem is, when you use a sulfate shampoo or a POO, a normal shampoo, you can moisturize your hair, you can use silicones, and there won't be any residues left because you are going to wash it again tomorrow with a sulfate shampoo. But if you use a co-wash shampoo and you want to use silicones and very heavy conditioners, you are going to have much more buildup. So it's impossible. You have to remind that if you choose a co-washing technique, you cannot use deep conditioners as silicones and mineral oil. Or you have so much deposit under your scales that your hair will look greasy and will look like a plica cosmetica. We don't want that. So we have to understand about the conditioning agencies. Even those who do not use too much chemical in the hair, they can dry the hair and pose the bubbles, or you can go to the hairdresser and do some very damage to your hair, removing the 18-methyl eicosanoic acid. You can have either a slightly damage in the cuticle scale, or even the cortex must be reached. So what shall we do? We have to aim in the anti-damage priority steps. First of all, lubricate, neutralize the negatively charged net, and third of all, if the cortex is achieved, to fill in the spaces. So we have three groups of cosmetics, generally speaking, one for lubrication, other for fillers, and the third one, anti-static agents. So this group here, silicones, oils, fatty alcohols, and polymers, are meant to lubricate the cuticle. Hydrolyzed amino acid polymers and fatty acids to diminish the static negatively charged and to fill the gaps if there are cracks. And the last group will be also the amino acids, hydrolyzed and cationic ingredients that will neutralize the negatively charged net. So, first of all, lubrication. Polymers and fatty acid and fatty alcohols and vegetable oils are the first in this line. So we have to think that the silicones are the most used agents as cosmetics aimed for lubrication of the cuticle. But silicones are very nice because they spread and they creep and they leave this slip and flexible sensation, and they are meant to mimic the loss of the 18-methyl eicosanoic acid. But silicones may very look alike, but they are not alike. They may be very different. Some are soluble, some are insoluble, some are the drops, like drops, some are lamellar, and depending on the shape of the silicone, they may or may not deposit. The normal silicone has any charge in the molecule, so the industry can add some positively charged molecules, ends, branches to the main molecule in order to increase the deposition of the silicone. If you have a negatively charged net after shampoo, you add a positively charged silicone, and this will quickly remove the excess of negativity. Also, the fatty acids that are derived from, for example, coconut oil or palm kernel oil, they give smooth and lubricate the fiber. There are some publications in this field, but not as much. For example, polymers with high molecular weight are much more effective. An example of a very common polymer that is used in much of the cosmetics for hair is the polyquaternary. Of course, there are many types of that. Also, polymers are the proteins derived from animals, for example, in this case, from feathers of chicken, or even from wheat. There are the vegetable ones too. So depending on the molecule weight, They can enter the cortex or just stay in the cuticle. And they are also positively charged. So they deposit here in the negatively charged net of the cuticle, and they neutralize the excess of freeze. Peptides can also control volume. They can avoid the excess of water intake. I told you that if you remove the 18-methyl-eicosanoic acid, you will have much more water intake, which will increase the fragility of the hair and the hair damage, so you can use it as a possibility. The coconut oil is one oil that is much studied. It can derive a fatty alcohol, or it also can be used integrity and decrease protein loss and acts in cuticle and cortex because it has a low molecular weight. It's one of the most studied vegetable oil. And to end this presentation, I'm going to quickly talk about the hair straightening procedure in Brazil, which used to be formaldehyde, but now it's a very special one. We have 3 official hair straightening, which are sodium hydroxide, guanidine, ammonium thioglycolate, but all of those 3, they break the disulfide bonds and they cause harm to the protein, to the keratin of the hair. And sometimes the problem is that the damage, the protein loss is too much. So the Brazilians are very creative. They invented a way of not breaking the disulfide bonds, not to remove the 18-methyl-eicosanoic acid, not to cause protein loss, and be possible to be used together with the bleached hair. Because here's the look that all Brazilian women want to have, half brown and half blonde. So the purpose of the BKT, which is the Brazilian keratin treatment, is exactly to add shine, minimize freeze, and minimize the volume. So we use the methylene glycol or the glyoxylic acid, which is not formaldehyde itself, but releases formaldehyde after being heated. So this is the reaction, and I thank Dr. Jennifer Marsh for this. When you apply the methylene glycol or glycolic acid to the hair and you activate with the hair dryer, then you straighten the keratin, but you also make a cross-linking between the molecules of keratin. When you do this cross-linking, all the keratin is already straightened by a normal blow dry, so it's kept in this new shape, not harming the disulfide bonds. So it gives the impression of a candy apple effect. But is it all? Is it the interior of the shaft, is it preserved or is it harmed? Well, we performed this study in 8 samples. 7 of the patients had formaldehyde and 1 didn't. So we analyzed the cuticle and the cortex. And what we saw using scanning electron microscopy and transmission electron microscopy was that the protein loss measurements were less protein eluded in the group that used the BKT. An increase in tensile strength, even in wet hair or in dry hair, for those who used the formaldehyde releasers. So there was no evidence of significant hair damage, no evidence of protein loss, and an increase of tensile strength after the use of the BKT. But BKT is not always the beauty. It is sometimes the beast. So this is a publication of ours showing that the redness and the scaleness, the psoriasiform lesions that may happen after the use of BKT in those patients is not what it was thought to be initially as contact dermatitis. We performed biopsies in those patients, and what we saw was a drug reaction biopsy, like a psoriasiform dermatitis, exactly as it was found using the TNF-alpha blockers. So it's a very interesting histopathology because it's exactly a direct reaction caused to the absorption of the released formaldehyde. Full of lymphocytes, plasma cells, and fragmented plasma cells and eosinophiles. According to Ackerman, it's one of the 4 groups of drug reactions caused by formaldehyde. We cannot leave behind that formaldehyde is a potentially mutagenic substance that in any way can be encouraged to be used. So we have to tell patients that it's not good to use formaldehyde. It may be mutagenic, it is used in very high levels, and the safeness is not proven anywhere. And also, this work here, made in Brazil, it correlated the use of BKT with the possibility of leukemia in children under 2 years of age. So this is what I encourage you to read. Two of our publications here about hair cosmetics and about shampoos. And also this Bible, I call it the Bible of hair cosmetics, is a chemical and physical behavior of human hair book, published, the 5th edition, published by Clarence Robbins, which is the most, I think, the most complete book about this issue. And all the differences are fine and have to be respected, and I think dermatologists must be up to date with everything about the scalp and everything about the hair in order to enhance the health of the patient as a whole. Thank you so much. This is our group in Brazil.
Any question? So you question? Yes?
You have curiosity because because people are lazy or because the modern life is so frenetic, but there is the use to have shampoo and conditioner combined in one product. So according to what you say, I guess that the conditioner should be not the one with the only charge, but neutralized by shampoo. And I was wondering if those the process that you make are less effective in reality than the separate two.
This is a very nice question, and I think this is a very interesting question even to answer. Yes, the shampoos that do not have conditioners are the shampoos aimed for oily hair. When you add conditioner to your shampoo, you are diminishing the property of cleansing your scalp. Or you can think that I am cleansing with a sulfate surfactant, which is the pool, which is harsh surfactant, but I'm also trying to neutralize the excess of negatively charged. So the industry can do either remove everything or add something that will diminish the consequence of the extreme production of this negatively charged net, but using the same sulfate. But if you think that you're going to use a no pool surfactant, so it will be the piglet there. It doesn't remove well the sebum. If you add conditioner, yes, you're going to do this plica cosmetica there, and it's going to be a build-up effect.
Any question? So I have a question.
Yes.
You show that distinctly the difference, ethnic difference between African, Asian, Caucasian. How the common feature of characteristic of South American people, including Brazilian.
In Brazil?
Yeah, in common structure, shape.
Yes, in Brazil we are mixed races. Yes, sometimes we do have mixed races and different kinds of hair that behave in both ways. But I think that African hair is very dominant, as well as Asian hair is very dominant. Caucasian hair is not. So if you mix an Asian person with a Caucasian person, we will get a different structure. But Asian hair and is always dominant. So you're going to have a baby with Asian hair if the Asian person mixes with a Caucasian person. And if an African person mixes with a Caucasian person, the hair is going to be much more African. So yes, we can blend the characteristics, but still the dominant one will show up. So you have to address. In Brazil we have many Asian people, but much more African people.
Thank you very much. We have to move on. Thank you very much, Dr. Bani.
Thank you.